I'm Brenda. Welcome back to my quilt room. Today, I would like to go over with you some of my most favorite notions. And if you're just a beginner and getting started, you don't have to spend a lot of money. There are some things that you will need to invest in, but other things that are a lot cheaper. You don't have to have the most expensive notions that there are out on the market today to get started. So obviously, let's get started. You will need to invest in a rotary cutter if you're going to be doing a lot of quilting. And I've probably had this same rotary cutter for probably 20 years. I do occasionally like to pick up blades when they're on sale so that you can change your blade out often. If you want, instead of buying a lot of templates, you can start off using just cardboard. Now this is just a cheap dollar store chopping mat, and these are great. You can cut these up into shapes if you need templates, or you can use a piece of cardboard. I've actually put entire quilts together and squared them up just by making the templates out of a book onto a piece of cardboard. Like in this book here, many years ago, I made this quilt, this baby quilt, the kaleidoscope. And I cut out all my pieces. You can purchase what's called this template plastic, but you can use that plastic cutting mat, cut your pieces out, and use these as a guide when you're using your cutter to cut your pieces out. So you don't have to spend a lot of money buying expensive templates. You'll need some scissors. Now these are just regular craft scissors. You can get them in the dollar store, anywhere. I don't cut fabric with these, but when you need to cut plastic or cut paper, then you need a pair of scissors. These little snips to cut threads with are wonderful. These are great and they're handy to have right beside your sewing machine to clip your threads from your project as you go. As far as cleaning your sewing machine, this is an old mascara brush, and I washed it and cleaned it. And this is wonderful for when I take the top off and get down in there to get the lint out. Now, if you don't have that, you may have pipe cleaners. These grab a lot of lint out of your machine, and they're inexpensive. Another thing that you'll probably have is a bobbin box with all your different colors of thread, and a lot of times your threads, it gets very messy, and I'm going to show you a cheap little trick on how to keep your bobbin box clean. All you really need is a straw. Now these are smoothie straws, and so they're a little bit larger than a regular straw. If you will just take your straw and your craft scissors and snip them into little sections, and they're springy, and just wrap them around your bobbin. They're just the right size to keep those tails of threads in place, and then your bobbin box doesn't stay messed up with tangled threads. Another thing you probably have around your house is a pair of tweezers. These are great for pulling threads or for pinching those little pieces of lint that you can't get to out of your machine. A seam ripper. You'll need a seam ripper. Unfortunately, we hate to rip out, but it is sometimes part of the process. Those are not very expensive. And from your office supply store, you can get these or rubber fingertips. These are great, especially if you're having to do some really close contact ironing. Cover your fingers, keeps them from getting burned. This is simply a skewer that I took out of the kitchen. And when you're doing a lot of chain piecing, sometimes you need to help feed the fabric through, and you don't want to get your fingers stuck in there, so this works great. I also have a little pointy quill. It does the same thing. I really like this. Post-it notes. They're good for several things. You can label your quilt rows and keep things organized as you go. You can also take the back paper off and stick this onto your sewing machine at the seam edge and use that as a guide. And it'll just sit there because it's sticky on the back, but it won't leave a residue on your sewing machine. And this will help you as you chain piece your pieces through the sewing machine. Another thing that I just love are these friction pins, and they come in several different colors. You can mark all over your fabric and then go over it with the iron and they disappear. Those are wonderful. You will probably need a few different kinds of pins. Now these are very thin flathead pins. These are wonderful for if you like to pin your quilt pieces together. It doesn't tend to distort the fabric. These are glass head pins, and I did test them by pinning something together and putting my iron on top of it. So if you need to have something that stays pinned together while you iron it, you would definitely want to buy some of those. Pin cushions, you're always, it seems like, needing pins. I have several pin cushions. This one I made from just a leftover piece of fabric when I had made a quilt for the fall, and I thought the scarecrow was so cute and I didn't want to throw it away, so I made it into a pin cushion. I simply sewed a ponytail holder to the back side, and then I can put that over my wrist, and I can just carry my pins with me if I have to get up and move away from the sewing machine to work on something else. These are just little clothespins, and I picked these up in the dollar store. These are wonderful for holding your project piece together. I like to use these when I'm hand binding a quilt, and I'm sure the Wonder Clips work great, and I'm not knocking those, but I think I got 20 or 30 of these for $1 in the dollar store, and the Wonder Clips are kind of pricey. There's also binder clips. You can find these in your office supply with like your rubber tip fingers and post-it notes. These are good to hold your binding on if you're doing work by hand. Or we called these barrettes when I was a little girl growing up, and they do the same thing. You just clip them on, and these hold your pieces together, or they're good for binding. Another thing I want to talk about is rulers. We talked about templates, but if you want to just invest in one good ruler that will work, you can use this tape, and it's called glow line tape, and I've had mine for a long time. And as you can see on here, I put a piece of tape across at the 2.5 inch line because I didn't have a triangle that size. This will work, and it peels off, and you can use it over and over. So if you can only invest in one nice ruler, get a big one, and then just use this to mark it off for your different varying widths as you need it, and make multiple uses out of the same tool. You can also get these little fabric grips, and they just peel off. They're like sandpaper, or you may have some sandpaper in your toolbox. Take a few pieces of that. That's what these are. This just helps the ruler stay in place and not slide across your fabric when you're squaring up or when you're cutting your fabric. Now this, you can't get much cheaper than this. And everybody probably has some of these. These are what your meats and things come from that are packaged on when you get them at the market. Probably these had roasts or chicken or something on them. And I've cleaned them up. These are wonderful little trays to hold your projects or your quilt blocks. Sometimes when we're moving from one area to another, it's easy to get our pieces turned around and then we end up sewing them the wrong direction. And I don't know how many of these I have in varying sizes. So right now I'm using them to keep my Dresden plate blades separated for a project that I'm working on, and it's just so handy to have it, and I can just carry this right to the sewing machine with me, set it down. If I need to move things in a hurry to work on something else, it's easy to pick up. So those are the notions that I have to show you today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.